Welcome to the Tulsa Beacon Weekend with Charlie Biggs on KCFO.
Hello and welcome to Tulsa Beacon Weekend. I'm your host, Charlie Biggs, publisher of the Tulsa Beacon newspaper, Tulsa's family newspaper. And joining us in studio is Brooks Mitchell, who is a Republican candidate for the Oklahoma Corporation Commission. It's great to have you in the show.
Good morning. It's great to be here.
Well, people in Tulsa may not be real familiar with you, so tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm a CPA. I've been a licensed CPA for over 25 years. I had my own practice for 15 years, and I recently left the Corporation Commission after 9 years. I was the last 6 years I worked there, I was the Director of Administration. I ran the day-to-day operations and managed 430 employees and a $40 million budget.
Whoa. Well, there are a lot of jobs, statewide jobs, that somebody could come in with a little bit of common sense and some related experience, and they could do well. I don't think Corporation Commission is one of those jobs, and I remember we visited with Dana Murphy on this on the show before, and it takes a little bit of expertise and experience to handle that job, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. The Corporation Commission is the main regulatory agency in the state, and it's a very diverse agency. It regulates public utilities, oil and gas, trucking, retail gas stations, and some underground pipelines. So it takes a broad base of knowledge. Because as a practical matter, if you go to, if anybody buys gas for their car, which is everybody listening to the show, they can actually rely upon the fact that when you pay for a gallon, you're getting a gallon. And part of that is due to the oversight of the Corporation Commission. That's correct. Our fuel specialists go out and they calibrate the pumps at all the stations twice a year.
You know, my in-laws live in Orlando, Florida, and we I drove back from there this last Christmas, and I only run straight gas in my car. I won't put the ethanol if I can help it. But Florida has a law that says you have to use ethanol in the gas. And coming back up through Alabama, we found a station that where we were able to fill up with 100% gas. That was the only one we saw in Alabama. And then we got into Memphis, and we found a station. And the guy at the station in Memphis said there's only two stations in all of Memphis, Tennessee that sell 100% gas. But there's plenty here in Oklahoma. But and sometimes I've seen stories about other states where they've had problems with people that sell gas just fudging, or tampering with their machines, and that really hadn't been a problem here, has it?
No, there haven't been any reported problems that I'm aware of.
Well, so why did you decide to jump into this race?
Well, having spent the last 9 years at the agency, first as an aide to Commissioner Jeff Cloud, and then I was the director of the Petroleum Storage Tank Division for 2.5 years, overseeing those retail gas stations, and then again the last 6 years as director of administration. Working closely with the commissioners, I gained an appreciation for how demanding the job is and how much energy it takes. And my opponent's been there 24 years, and I don't see that he's exhibited the energy necessary to do the job.
And what? Apart from could you tell us your background again too? Apart from the work at the Corporation Commission, you're a CPA, and did you have your own company, or did you work for somebody, or?
I'm a CPA. I started with a regional accounting firm, Regier, Carr & Monroe. They have an office here in Tulsa. I worked in the Oklahoma City office, and then I had my own practice for 15 years. And my clientele were small businesses. I felt that I wanted to help small businesses because I felt like I could make more of a difference for them. And I understand how much government regulation can really impact their business and how they have to operate.
One of the big topics right now is, of course, fuel transportation, and Oklahoma has always been a big producer of oil and natural gas, and now there's a lot of talk about making it easier to own a car that is fueled by natural gas. What do you see as you look into the future, and you see, because one of the drawbacks you hear about natural gas fueled vehicles is, I don't know where I can fill up, and even like here in Tulsa, there's only a couple of places where you can fill up. What are some of the challenges that are going to be faced if America tries to turn more toward natural gas fueled vehicles?
Well, as the demand increases for natural gas fuel vehicles, I think you're going to see a couple of things. One, I think you're going to see the infrastructure be put into place to where these vehicles can be refueled at numerous locations instead of just the few that are there now. As I've traveled across the state, time and time again in this campaign, I'm seeing more and more stations that are putting in an option to where you can use the CNG. And then I think ultimately, and Governor Fallon called for this the other day, that the automobile manufacturers will manufacture cars that are CNG. You won't have to have your car retrofitted for it.
Right. And do you you see, envision a time when I could buy a car that's fueled by compressed natural gas, and I can drive it in my garage and hook it up to something through my gas line at my house and fill up there?
I think that's a possibility in the future.
But what are the drawbacks of that?
Well, I'm not sure that there are any drawbacks necessarily. I think you've got safety issues that people that do this will certainly have to be educated on, and how much of a demand that there will be for people that actually want to do it that way, fill up in their garage as opposed to just go to a retail station that ultimately will just be down the street from them.
Well, are there any in terms of public safety? Are there any issues that with compressed natural gas it would be very different from gasoline?
No, it's just another fuel source, and people just need to understand the do's and don'ts when they fill up.
Well, in this we have a national presidential campaign going on, and I think as I look at some of the national issues, they really relate to Oklahoma. I mean, we have the debt and the taxation and the healthcare issues, but I see energy as one of the critical issues on a national basis, and perhaps it's even more critical in Oklahoma. You think that's true, or?
Yes, energy is a critical issue for Oklahoma because the energy industry is the main driver of our state's economy.
Yeah, it has been too. Now, for decades, Oklahoma's tried to diversify. We've gone heavy into aerospace, and then although American Airlines is having its share of troubles, but one of the issues that has come under a lot of scrutiny, I think, is the fracking. Is that?
Yes, hydraulic fracking.
Hydraulic fracking, yeah. Why is that controversial?
Well, it's controversial because the Obama administration and the EPA under the Obama administration, they want renewable energy. They don't like fossil fuels, and so they have just assaulted them since the president's been in office. And what they've done is they've put out, in my opinion, misinformation about that hydraulic fracking contaminates groundwater and creates other environmental problems. And in Oklahoma, that's just not true. It's a process that's been around for, I believe, 70, 80 years, and it's been proven to be safe. And we haven't had a groundwater contamination incident in Oklahoma due to hydraulic fracking.
Well, people say it's causing earthquakes too. Do you think that's any? But from what I hear from people in the industry, they say that the fracking and the is at a different level, that it couldn't possibly be causing this stuff. But they say, well, the reason we're having record earthquakes, which even though they're record in Oklahoma, they're not very big. Is there any hint of truth to that?
Well, I've just realized here in the last couple of years that Oklahoma has always been seismically very active. I didn't realize that. I thought,
we have over 100 a year.
Yeah, I thought that was reserved for California, but actually it occurs in Oklahoma too. I've heard a couple of presentations from the geology department at the University of Oklahoma, and they don't see that the two are tied together, and they're the scientists and I'm not. So until they can come up with some of those conclusions, I will rely on what they've said.
You're listening to Tulsa Beacon Weekend. I'm your host, Charlie Biggs, publisher of the Tulsa Beacon newspaper, Tulsa's family newspaper. And by the way, if you want to find out why the Oklahoma Supreme Court kicked out the petition for the personhood amendment, we have a complete report in the Tulsa Beacon this week. Pick up a copy. Tulsa area quick trips are called 918-523-4425. 918-523-4425 will sell you a subscription. Or you can go online, and this is very hard to remember, but it's tulsabeacon.com. www.tulsabeacon.com. We're talking with Brooks Mitchell, who is a Republican candidate for the Oklahoma Corporation Commission. In fact, that's the only statewide vote on the ballot in November. Well, it won't be in November. It'll be in June 26th.
June 26th. That's
right.
Correct.
How can people contact your campaign?
They can go to my website, www.friendsofbrooksmitchell.org. We have a Facebook page that you can link to off the website. And then my phone number, encourage people to call me anytime, is area code 405-818-7086 if they have any questions.
That's way too quick. This is radio. You have to repeat that kind of slower.
Again, my website is www.friendsofbrooksmitchell.org. We have a Facebook page also. And then my phone number is area code 405-818-7086.
Okay, thanks. The Keystone Pipeline has been a big issue too, and there is a gigantic debate about whether America can be energy independent and whether the current administration is friendly toward energy production or not. And Oklahoma is a key in that whole debate about the Keystone Pipeline. And does the Corporation Commission, do you guys supervise pipelines, or what oversight is there from that?
On some of the pipelines that we have, we look at the maintenance and the safety issues. As far as where they actually put the pipeline, that's not something we're involved in.
Well, do you have a view on that? I mean, do you think, are you in favor of the pipeline, or?
I'm in favor of the pipeline. I think especially the southern half of the pipeline is critical for Oklahoma, because the problem we have right now is we have a glut of crude in Cushing that we have a hard time moving out, and because of that, our producers in Oklahoma are not getting the market price for their oil. So I think this southern leg of the Keystone Pipeline will be very beneficial, because then our producers will be able to get market price for their fuel, and our royalty owners will be able to collect the market price, and it also, raises more gross production tax for our state.
Does the Corporation Commission, do you supervise refineries?
No, we do not.
Okay.
That's
because one of the problems, I think, is not only the supply of oil, but the refinery capacity, and then the pipelines that seem to be critical in terms of getting the product to the refineries that are existing, because I don't think we've built a new refinery in America in the last 30 years or something like that.
That's correct.
Yeah. And I've, from my contacts with people in the oil and gas business, is that in terms of having 10,000 ships come from the Middle East loaded with oil, and in terms of environmental impact versus a pipeline, the pipeline wins every time.
That's correct. I agree.
Okay. I got to quit asking yes or no questions. Tell us a little bit. You kind of touched on this too, but what is the day-to-day type of activity that the Corporation Commission engages in?
Well, the Corporation Commission, there are a lot of drilling permits that are applications for permits to drill that are filed every day. The people in the trucking industry, they have their various permits and registrations that they need to have. The Petroleum Storage Tank Division, they have the inspections of the retail stations that go on every day. Public utilities, people file for rate cases, things like that. The Commission's a very busy agency. Last year there were over 29,000 applications filed, and over 10,000 commission orders were issued.
29,000. And these are not simple. These are complicated issues too, aren't they?
Many of them are, yes.
Does it interact? Do you interact with the EPA at all?
Yes, we do. Our Oil and Gas Division does, because the EPA is interested in what they're doing and their oversight with their regulatory program, and also the Petroleum Storage Tank Division. Also, the EPA interacts with them also. So we do have contact with the EPA frequently. Well,
we had a regional director of the EPA resign this week because of some controversial comments he made about picking some companies. It sounded like oil companies, just picking out 5 of them and crucifying them just to make a point. And I know from feedback I hear from the energy industry is that they feel like it's a war with the EPA right now. Is that a fair statement?
I think it is, because the EPA and the Obama administration they've not held back as far as their dislike for the energy industry and fossil fuel production. So I believe that's the case, and I think the energy industry needs to stand up and show exactly all of the good things that they do.
Well, and we had a steep rise in gas prices. I know you don't deal with the market aspect of this, but gasoline's gone up and now it's gone back down. Do you see? And usually in the summertime, this time of December, the gasoline goes up because of I think it's 28 blends that people have to produce across the country. And it's a lot more expensive for a refinery to have to produce different blends than one blend. So what do you see on the horizon here in terms of gasoline prices?
Well, the gasoline prices are still tied to the oil prices, and so if the oil prices stabilize or even decrease a little more, then I think you'll see the gasoline prices stabilize and maybe go down a little bit. Now, as far as when the refineries actually start producing the summer blends that you mentioned, I think it's likely here around Memorial Day that they go up a little bit, because historically that's when it happens.
Well, and the usage is down too, right? I mean, Americans are trying to cut back. I know a lot of people that are looking for those high mileage cars, and they're trying to drive a little bit less.
That's correct.
Listen to Tulsa Beacon Weekend. I'm your host, Charlie Biggs, publisher of the Tulsa Beacon newspaper, Tulsa's family newspaper, and we're talking with Brooks Mitchell, who is the Republican candidate for the Corporation Commission. Again, tell people how they can, your website and contact number.
My website is www.friendsofbrooksmitchell.org, and we also have a Facebook page that you can link to from the website. And then my phone number is area code 405-818-7086.
Facebook, I'm not familiar with that. No, I'm just kidding. I think I'm the last person in North America without a Facebook account. As you, I know you. How many counties have you visited in your campaign? You have any idea?
I haven't made it to all 77 of them, but I have probably made it to 60 of them.
Okay. And as you go around, what do you hear? What's your feedback? What kind of questions or issues are people raising?
Well, people are concerned about the energy industry, and they're concerned about the EPA and what the EPA might do. They're concerned that their elected officials aren't always listening to their issues and their concerns, and a lot of them feel like my opponent's just been there too long.
Well, and I wanted to ask you about that too, because we should mention that Bob Anthony is the incumbent, and he's running again, and he's your opponent in the June 26th Republican primary. We passed term limits for statewide offices, right?
That's correct.
And so how many is he grandfathered in? Because you said he had 24 years in. Does he get another 12 years, or how does that work?
Yes, as it worked out, he's the only elected official that's grandfathered in. So he can conceivably serve 2 more terms. So potentially Bob Anthony could serve 6 terms, while everybody else in the state could only serve 2.
And what is the what would be different if you were elected? I mean, in terms of the person in that office. I mean, what do you feel? What differences would you make?
Well, I have a record of resolving conflict and being able to work with people. I have a very excellent record, in my opinion, of working with the legislature, which the agency has been able to get their bills passed and needed changes to their statutes in the last 8 years that I did that. Before I came to the agency in 2003, the agency had a very difficult time getting any changes made to their statutes to help them better administer their programs. I feel like I will work better with the other 2 commissioners than what my opponent is able to do. And then you also have to work with the citizens of the state and with other federal and state agencies. And I think I have a very good record of being able to do that also. And I will bring a fresh perspective to the position, which I think is needed after 24 years.
Have there been cutbacks to the budget on the Corporation Commission, or has it been held steady?
The commission budget the last couple of 3 years has been pretty steady.
Does it generate income from like fees or stuff? I mean, what percentage of that is like from state funds or from generated within the Corporation Commission?
You have roughly a third of the budget is generated from the state appropriation that we receive from the legislature. You have roughly 20% of it is federal monies, grants, and things like that, and the rest of it is fee income.
Do you feel like it's pretty efficient, pretty lean and mean in that department?
Well, I think it is, but it can always be better. I think the agency needs to embrace technology, and they need to continue to modernize. This was started while I was there. I think the agency needs a new case filing system. All of the other courts in the country have gone to electronic filing. I think the commission needs to do the same thing. And then there are other databases that need to be modernized that can talk to one another, as opposed to having to enter the data twice. You have any idea how much that would cost to update? I mean, you're talking about basically computerizing as much as you can and going to a non-paper-based type system, right? Yes.
And is that going to cost hundreds of thousands or tens of thousands or millions, or what do you think?
Well, the case filing system that I mentioned will probably cost right around $3 million. Ultimately, we want to be an efficient agency, and so where you have the savings is when you can take advantage of the technology, and then you have employees that retire. A lot of those positions you won't have to refill, and so you save money on state payroll cost.
Well, we've seen the price of barrel of oil. I don't know what it is now. Is it $100? I have no idea.
Roughly right around $100.
About $100, okay. I can remember when, I'm not that old, but I'm old enough to remember when it got down to $8 a barrel at one point, and people were just shutting down their wells, especially the stripper wells and the guys that might have 10 acres out in the country and might have a little well on there, and they were closing it down. But when it's $100 a barrel, people are pumping full blast. Do you have any idea what activity-wise, historically, how it is right now in Oklahoma in terms of how many wells are operating? I'm sorry to ask you that because you probably don't have that number on top of your head, but I just did kind of a round number.
I believe that there are over 100,000 active wells in the state right now.
Is that right?
Yes.
And what would be the lowest, in your knowledge, in recent history? When would that number have been lowest, and what would it have been?
Well, I think in recent history, I think that number probably would have been lower sometime in the 90s when the prices got real low and a lot of the wells were probably shut in. But these stripper wells that you mentioned, a lot of these smaller producers, they keep these wells online because at $100 a barrel, they're economically viable to do that. People look at the price of oil and think, well, okay, it's $100, so it must be very profitable. But there are still maintenance issues and things like that. There are expenses in running these wells. Right. So, but because the prices are where they are right now, a lot of these stripper wells are still out there and they're producing and making several barrels a day. And
as I understand it, if you shut down a stripper well, you can't really just open it back up, can you?
No, there's other things that you have to do to it to get it back online.
Do the people that run these 100,000 wells, how do they view the level of regulation? Because one of the things I've talked to several politicians about is they want to help small business people because small business people generate 70-80% of the jobs in the country. That's it. Everybody throws out these statistics, and there's two things that I'm a small businessman. There's two things that we typically complain about. One is a lack of capital, but the other is overregulation. We talked about the EPA. I think they're probably worse, and the federal government's worse. But is that the kind of feedback do these guys think that there's too much regulation on, or how do they feel about that in terms of these small operators?
Well, the small operators want their voice to be heard at the commission. They want someone that will take the time to study their issues and stand up for them if they believe that they're right. And you're right, small business does create a lot of jobs in this state, and so it's important that those things are addressed, and that's what I pledge to do.
Are there any other issues that you feel like have kind of been raised in this campaign that kind of hit a chord with people?
Well, I think people appreciate the fact that I have the experience that I have at the agency. I've participated at the highest levels of the Corporation Commission. I am a CPA, so I have a good financial background. I have 15 years of experience working with small businesses. I do understand the impact that government regulations can make, and they appreciate my fresh perspective in wanting to modernize the agency because they understand that technology, we have to embrace technology to make us more efficient because it helps make them more efficient.
Well, a year or two ago, I guess it was, in Tulsa here, we had the overlay of the area code and the telephone system, which is under the auspices of the Corporation Commission. And instead of, I guess when it happened in Oklahoma City, they ran out of area code numbers in Oklahoma City. They split it into two different zones, and here they overlaid it, and so now we do. When you dial a phone here in Tulsa, you have to put 918 in front of it, or the other one too. How's that been going in terms of being implemented?
The implementation was very good. This has happened in several other states before it happened in Tulsa, and Wisconsin is the state that comes to mind. They had all kinds of problems in Wisconsin. So, but the implementation here was very good because the communication with the commission and the telephone companies was very good and very consistent, and so you didn't have the network problems here that you had in Wisconsin and other states.
Do you know how many new numbers have been issued in the new area code?
No, I sure don't.
I mean, is it very many? To me, I don't know anybody. I don't know any numbers that are in the new code, but that doesn't mean anything because I'm not up on everything. But it seems to me it has had minimal impact in terms of having to put out new numbers.
I mean, I'm sure it's probably several thousand, but I don't know what the exact number is.
Yeah. Do you have a preference of the overlay plan or the splitting? Were you on either side of that, or?
My duties as director of administration, I didn't really participate in that particular issue. I probably would have favored the splitting, but again, I didn't directly participate, so I didn't hear all the testimony and all the concerns that people raised.
Yeah, how long do you think we'll have to do it again?
I hope it'll be a number of years.
Okay. Well, we've been talking with Brooks Mitchell, who is a Republican running for Oklahoma Corporation Commission. He's in the Republican primary on June 26th. This is the only statewide race this year. We have a presidential race. We have this race, and then we have everybody in the House is up this year, and a half of the Senate. I think it's the odd number of Senate districts are up this year, and we have actually have a couple of city council races in Tulsa, and I think we have we only have one county race too. But tell us again how people can contact your campaign.
My website is www.friendsofbrooksmitchell.org, and we also have a Facebook page that you can link to, and my phone number is area code 405-818-7086.
And do you have any appearances in Tulsa coming up in the next few weeks?
Yes, we'll be up here next Tuesday at a candidate forum at the Tulsa County Republican Women's Club.
And that's at the...
That's at the Hilton, Southern Hills Hilton.
That's right, out by ORU. Well, thank you for coming on the show. It's great to hear about your campaign, and best wishes to you.
Charlie, I appreciate it. Thank you for having me on.
And we'll be right back after these important announcements.